Imagine waking up in a city where the streets hum softly with energy drawn not from wires or machines, but from crystals that glow with their own light, where temples sing with sound frequencies that heal the sick, and towers rise toward the heavens, aligned perfectly with the stars. A paradise advanced beyond our comprehension, and then, within a single day and night, gone, swallowed by the ocean's depths, erased from history, leaving behind only whispers. This, according to Plato, was Atlantis, a land greater than Libya and Asia combined, an empire that stretched its hand across continents, only to vanish in a cataclysm so sudden that survivors spoke of it as divine punishment. But what was Atlantis? Was it a real civilization that perished in prehistory, or a metaphor crafted by one of the greatest philosophers of all time? Why does its legend persist, generation after generation, inspiring explorers, scientists, mystics, and conspiracy theorists alike? Perhaps because Atlantis represents more than a city. It is the mirror of humanity's deepest longing and its darkest fear, a utopia of power, knowledge, and beauty, undone by hubris, arrogance, or forces beyond imagination. From the writings of Plato in 360 BCE, to maps that may show ice-free coastlines of Antarctica, to modern claims of alien intervention, the mystery has never faded. In fact, it has only grown. For if Atlantis was real, its existence would rewrite history itself. But the story is not just about a sunken island. It is about forbidden knowledge, ancient cataclysms, and the possibility that civilizations far older than we dare admit once thrived on this planet. Civilizations that may have mastered technology and science that we, today in our so-called modern world, are only beginning to rediscover. The question is, did such a world ever exist? And if so, where is it now? Prepare yourself, for the journey ahead will take us from Plato's dialogues to forbidden maps, from the depths of the Atlantic Ocean to the frozen wilderness of Antarctica. We will encounter scholars, prophets, and conspirators. We will explore temples of sound, machines of levitation, and the possibility that what we call myth may in fact be fragments of a forgotten truth. Atlantis is not merely a legend. It is a wound in history, one that bleeds mystery, one that refuses to heal. And tonight we open it once more. But before we can understand the lost continent, we must go back. Back to where it all began, with the words of a philosopher who dared to write what others feared to say. And so, the tale of Atlantis begins with Plato. But was he describing history, or inventing a warning for the future? To trace Atlantis back to its origin, we must walk into the halls of ancient Athens, more than 2,300 years ago. There, a philosopher named Plato, student of Socrates, teacher of Aristotle, penned two dialogues that would echo through eternity, Timaeus and Critias. In these works, written around 360 BCE, Plato claimed to be passing down a story told by Solon, the great Athenian statesman and lawgiver. According to Plato, Solon had traveled to Egypt centuries earlier, where priests in the city of Sais revealed to him a tale preserved in their sacred records. A tale of a mighty island kingdom lying beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. Plato described Atlantis as a vast empire, greater in size than Libya and Asia combined. Its rulers controlled islands and territories as far as Egypt and Italy. It was a land of concentric rings of water and land, a marvel of engineering, with bridges and canals that connected the sea to its shining central city. Its temples were covered in precious metals, copper, orichalcum, and gold that gleamed like fire in the sunlight. But what struck readers most was not just its wealth, it was its power and advancement. Atlantis, Plato wrote, possessed technologies, laws, and knowledge that surpassed all known civilizations. He described temples of Poseidon built on scales too vast to comprehend, and palaces that blended sacred geometry with raw grandeur. It was in every way a utopia, and yet Plato did not tell this tale as a celebration. He told it as a warning, for with great power came corruption. Over time, the Atlanteans abandoned their virtue, seeking conquest and domination. Their armies stretched across the Mediterranean, threatening even Athens. The gods, offended by their arrogance, struck them down. Plato's words are chilling in their simplicity. In a single day and night of misfortune, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. To some, this was allegory, a philosophical lesson about the dangers of pride. But to others, it was no metaphor at all. It was history, a real record of a civilization that once was, preserved by Egyptian priests and passed down through the centuries. Consider this: Plato was no mere storyteller. His works shaped Western philosophy itself. If Atlantis were merely a fable, why would he embed it within otherwise serious discourses on the cosmos, the state, and the soul? And why anchor it with precise geography, the pillars of Heracles, the Mediterranean, Libya, Tyrrhenia, Egypt? Allegories rarely come with maps. And there is another detail that haunts historians. Plato dated the fall of Atlantis to around 9,000 years before Solon's time, placing the catastrophe roughly 11,600 years ago. Coincidence? Or does this eerily align with the end of the last ice age, when massive floods reshaped the world and entire coastlines sank beneath rising seas? Some scholars dismiss this as myth. Others see in it a memory of cataclysm, preserved across cultures. The great floods described in Mesopotamia, in the Book of Genesis, in Hindu tradition, and in countless tribal legends around the globe. Plato may not have invented Atlantis. He may have simply recorded a story already ancient in his time, a story that whispered of a forgotten chapter of human history. But if Atlantis was real, where was it? What did it look like? And could myths from distant lands preserve its memory in fragments? To find out, we must follow the trail of legends. Myths of strange lands, golden cities, and drowned empires. Stories that echo across continents, as though humanity itself cannot forget what it once lost. And so, we turn from philosophy to myth. For myths, too, hold truths. Truths wrapped in shadows, waiting to be unveiled. Plato gave us the skeleton of the tale, an island beyond the pillars of Heracles, a mighty empire swallowed by the sea. But across the world, in lands separated by oceans and millennia, myths appear like scattered bones, hinting at a shared memory of a drowned civilization. In Egypt, the priests who first told Solon of Atlantis spoke of a cycle of floods and fires, of civilizations rising and falling under the gaze of the gods. Their own myths tell of Zep-Tepi, the first time, when gods walked among men and knowledge flowed freely before the waters came. Could this memory echo the same catastrophe Plato described? Travel to Mesopotamia, and you'll hear of the great flood of Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh. A flood so devastating it wiped clean the earth's cities, sparing only a chosen remnant. The story, written thousands of years before Plato, mirrors the biblical tale of Noah and suggests that ancient peoples remembered a singular, world-altering deluge. But it is in the Americas that the whispers grow stranger. Among the Maya, the Popol Vuh recounts worlds destroyed by water before the present age of humanity began. In Andean legend, the Viracocha god emerges from the sea after a flood, bringing wisdom to the scattered survivors. And on the shores of the Caribbean, the Taino people spoke of islands that once existed, swallowed by the waves, just as sailors in the Atlantic spoke of the mysterious islands of the seven cities. Then there are the Polynesians, whose navigators preserved stories of lost lands swallowed by the ocean, and the Maori of New Zealand, who told of great floods and migrations across a world reshaped by rising seas. These myths, scattered yet strangely consistent, whisper of a memory older than writing itself, a world-ending flood and the fall of civilizations. Even more striking are the geographical descriptions hidden in these tales. Plato's Atlantis was described as a land of concentric rings of land and water, connected by canals, an image echoed in the city plans of cultures as distant as the Minoans on Crete, or even the mysterious ruins of Nan Madol in the Pacific. Some researchers claim the very Bermuda Triangle matches Plato's description of a gateway to Atlantis, a place where ships vanish as if the sea itself hungers to keep its secrets. But could these parallels be coincidence? Or do they suggest that humanity is remembering, like a dream slipping through our fingers, a real civilization lost to the ocean's abyss? One striking clue comes from the end of the last ice age, around 11,600 years ago, when sea levels rose by over 120 meters. Entire coastlines vanished. Cities built along those coasts would have been swallowed whole. Modern sonar has detected ruins beneath the seas off India, Japan, and the Caribbean, structures eerily aligned with Plato's timeline. And then there are the linguistic echoes. In Mesoamerica, the Nahuatl word Aztlan refers to a mythical homeland of the Aztec people, an island city that sank beneath the waves. The similarity to Atlantis is uncanny. Did these legends spring from the same ancient source? Perhaps myths are not mere fables, but the memory of survivors, fragments of truth carried across oceans, embedded in culture, religion, and story. Fragments pointing to something that really happened. But if Atlantis truly existed, and myths across the world echo its memory, the next question burns. What destroyed it? Plato spoke of violent earthquakes and floods. Modern science tells of rising seas and collapsing ice sheets. But are these enough to explain the sudden obliteration of a continent-spanning civilization? Or was the destruction of Atlantis far stranger and far more violent than we dare imagine? Plato wrote with chilling clarity, "In a single day and night of misfortune, Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. Not centuries, not gradual decline, but sudden, catastrophic obliteration." What force could erase a civilization said to rival the greatest empires of antiquity, erasing its temples, its palaces, its very soil, without leaving a trace on the surface of the earth? One possibility is the wrath of the planet itself. Archaeologists and geologists have long linked Atlantis with violent natural disasters. The most common theory is volcanic eruption. In the Aegean Sea around 1600 BCE, the island of Thera, today known as Santorini, was ripped apart by one of the most violent eruptions in human history. Ash blotted out the sun. Tsunamis rose like mountains, smashing into the coasts of Crete. Entire cities vanished. Some believe this disaster inspired Plato's tale, its devastation preserved in memory and magnified into myth. But Thera does not match Plato's dating, nor its vast geography. Atlantis, he claimed, fell 9,000 years before Solon's time, around 11,600 years ago. And here lies the haunting connection. That moment in time coincides exactly with the end of the Younger Dryas, a mysterious period when Earth's climate swung violently, ice sheets collapsed, and seas rose with terrifying speed. Imagine it. Walls of water rushing inland, devouring coastlines. Earthquakes shattering entire regions as glaciers cracked and the crust of the planet groaned under shifting weight. If Atlantis lay along those ancient shores, it would have been obliterated without mercy. Some scientists propose that a comet impact may have triggered this sudden chaos. Evidence of nanodiamonds, melted glass, and unusual carbon deposits have been found at archaeological sites across North America and Europe, pointing to a cosmic event around 12,000 years ago. If true, it could explain the sudden collapse of megafauna, the floods remembered in myths, and perhaps the destruction of a civilization that dared to rise too soon. Others turn to the ocean itself. The Azores, a cluster of volcanic islands in the mid-Atlantic, sit atop a tectonic triple junction. Here, the Earth is restless, its plates grinding, shifting, birthing tsunamis and earthquakes. Could Atlantis have been an island here, shattered by tectonic fury and drowned beneath the waves? And yet, the scale of destruction Plato describes feels almost supernatural. An empire undone not just by nature, but by judgment. He wrote that the Atlanteans had grown corrupt, greedy, and violent, that the gods themselves decreed their end. Perhaps this was Plato's philosophical flourish. Or perhaps ancient peoples truly believed that when nature strikes, it is the hand of the divine. Picture it. A city of gleaming white walls and golden domes, where crystal towers hum with energy. Then the sky darkens, the earth quakes, the sea rises, fires burn, waters roar, screams echo, and by dawn, silence. The proud empire lies beneath the abyss, its memory carried only by the survivors who told of a paradise destroyed in a night of terror. But here lies the enigma. If Atlantis was erased so completely, how do we know of it at all? Why do fragments of its story surface in myths across the world? Could there be more to this tale than mere natural disaster? Or was Atlantis never meant to be taken as history at all, but as something far more symbolic? Not everyone who hears Plato's tale believes he was recording history. Many scholars argue that Atlantis never existed at all, that it was simply a story, crafted as a moral parable. A warning against pride, greed, and the arrogance of empire. Plato was, after all, a philosopher, not a historian. His dialogues were not chronicles of kings and battles, but explorations of ideas. In Timaeus and Critias, Atlantis serves a dramatic purpose. It is the villain, an advanced but corrupt society brought low by its own hubris, set against the virtuous, humble Athenians, who stood firm in the face of overwhelming power. To these interpreters, Atlantis was no lost continent. It was a mirror, a reflection of Athens itself during Plato's lifetime. The Greek world had recently endured the Peloponnesian War, a brutal conflict that saw Athens rise in pride, then fall in defeat. Was Plato, in his tale of Atlantis, holding up a warning to his fellow Athenians? A reminder that even the greatest city can crumble when arrogance blinds its people? If so, the story of Atlantis was not meant to be taken literally. It was allegory, philosophy, a tool to teach. And yet, even as allegory, the story fascinates. Because in Plato's hands, it feels too vivid, too detailed. He gave us not only morals, but measurements. The size of the island, the rings of its capital city, the names of its kings. He traced its empire's reach across Europe and Africa. If it were merely a metaphor, why weigh it down with so much geography and precision? Some argue that Plato may have been blending truth with fiction, using an old story, perhaps from Egyptian lore, as the seed of his teaching. Like an artist painting history with symbolic colors, he may have taken a real memory of catastrophe and transformed it into a timeless lesson. Others suggest that the very appeal of Atlantis lies in this ambiguity. Myth and history are not always separate. In ancient times, stories were the way people preserved memory. Myths were not false. They were truths wrapped in poetry, fragments of history clothed in symbols. Could it be that Atlantis was both a moral parable and a distorted memory of something real? Consider this: when Homer sang of Troy, many dismissed it as legend. For centuries, Troy was thought to be a myth, until Heinrich Schliemann dug into the earth of Hizarlik and unearthed the walls of a once great city. What was myth became history. Could Atlantis, too, be waiting for its Schliemann? And so we are left with two Atlantean visions, one of allegory, a story meant to teach virtue, the other of reality, a lost empire swallowed by the sea. But what if there is a third possibility? What if Atlantis was neither mere parable nor ordinary kingdom? What if it was something else entirely, something beyond human? For in the shadows of the legend lies a darker thread. Whispers of lost technologies, alien visitors, and civilizations that rose with knowledge not of this earth. And if those whispers are true, then Atlantis was no myth. It was a secret far more dangerous. What if Plato's tale was only half the truth? What if the destruction of Atlantis was not just a tragedy, but a cover-up, a deliberate burial of knowledge too dangerous for humanity to hold? For centuries, Atlantis has been tied to whispers of lost technology. Plato hinted at advanced engineering, canals carved with precision, temples plated in metals unknown to Greeks, and a capital city of concentric rings, a feat of urban planning even modern architects admire. But other accounts, later myths, esoteric writings, and conspiracy theories paint Atlantis as a civilization so advanced it bordered on the miraculous. Here, crystal towers did more than shine, they channeled energy. Massive stones hummed with resonance, powering the city without smoke, fire, or wires. Healers wielded sound and light to mend the body. Atlantean priests studied the stars not with naked eyes, but with instruments older than Galileo's telescope. Where did this knowledge come from? Some say it was the legacy of the Watchers described in the Book of Enoch, mysterious beings who came down from the heavens and gave mankind forbidden knowledge, from astronomy to metallurgy. Were these angels simply myth, or echoes of an older memory, of non-human teachers who walked among us? In Africa, legends of the Mami Wata speak of aquatic beings who abducted humans and mingled with them. In Babylonian lore, the Apkallu emerged from the sea to teach early civilization. And in Greece, Poseidon, the god of the sea, was said to have founded Atlantis itself by mating with a mortal woman. Over and over, the same theme emerges: knowledge descending from the sky or the sea, changing humanity forever. Could Atlantis have been the hub where these forces converged? A place where human ambition met alien wisdom, creating wonders we can barely imagine today? Modern conspiracy theorists claim Atlanteans had flying machines powered by anti-gravity crystals. Others say they harnessed zero-point energy, the same mysterious force Nikola Tesla hinted at centuries later. Some even argue that Atlantis was not a city at all, but a colony of extraterrestrials, abandoned when catastrophe struck. And then there are the most chilling whispers, that fragments of Atlantean knowledge survive even now, hidden by secret societies, guarded by the Vatican, or locked away in military vaults. They say this is why the legend persists, because powerful hands ensure that it never fades from human memory. But here lies the danger. Legends warn that Atlantis fell not because of the sea, but because of its own arrogance. Its people, wielding power beyond their wisdom, turned their technologies to conquest, corruption, and greed. The gods, or perhaps their alien benefactors, decided humanity was not ready, and so Atlantis was erased. Yet, if fragments of its knowledge survived, what does that mean for us? Are we repeating the same path, dabbling in forces we barely understand? From nuclear energy to AI, from genetic manipulation to quantum experiments, are we walking once more in the footsteps of Atlantis? One thing is certain. If Atlantis was real, it was not just a city. It was a secret, one so profound that even now, thousands of years later, its shadow unsettles kings, priests, and governments alike. But whispers alone are not enough. If Atlantis existed, people have tried to find it. Explorers, mystics, scientists, all have searched for the lost continent. Some have claimed to see its ruins. Others insist its ghost still haunts the oceans. So where did they look? And did they find anything at all? For over 2,000 years, Atlantis has been the ultimate treasure map, the promise of a forgotten world waiting beneath the waves. Explorers, scholars, mystics, and madmen alike have devoted lifetimes to its pursuit. Some claimed success, others vanished in the search, and every attempt only deepened the mystery. The first great hunt began with the ancient Greeks themselves. Philosophers after Plato debated its location. Was it west of the Pillars of Heracles, as he claimed? Or was it allegory, never meant to be pursued? Some, like Crantor, a student of Plato, insisted it was real, pointing to inscriptions in Egypt as proof. But no ruins emerged, and the question drifted into myth. Centuries later, when the age of exploration dawned, Atlantis fever ignited once more. As Columbus and his rivals sailed west, many believed the New World might be the remains of Atlantis itself. The lush lands of the Caribbean, the mighty pyramids of Mesoamerica, the golden empires of the Aztecs and Incas, all seemed to echo Plato's description of a powerful, advanced people across the ocean. Some even claimed the word Aztlan, the mythical Aztec homeland, was no coincidence, a linguistic twin of Atlantis. In the 19th century, Atlantis fever reached its peak. Ignatius Donnelly, an American congressman, published Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, in 1882. In it, he argued that Atlantis was the cradle of all civilization, that Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Americas inherited their knowledge from this lost continent. His book became a sensation, igniting waves of speculation that continue to this day. But Atlantis has never had one home. Instead, it has been placed everywhere. Some point to the Azores in the mid-Atlantic volcanic islands that may be the mountaintops of a drowned continent. Others to the Caribbean, where sonar scans near Cuba reportedly revealed massive stone blocks beneath the sea, an underwater city, whispered to be Atlantean. In the Mediterranean, some argue for Santorini, its volcanic destruction mirroring Plato's tale, though its scale is too small. Others point to southern Spain, where strange circular ruins in Diana National Park resemble the concentric rings Plato described. And then there is Antarctica, a land buried in ice, yet shown ice-free on ancient maps such as the Piri Reis chart. Could this frozen wasteland once have been green, home to Atlanteans before a sudden shift in Earth's crust dragged it south into eternal winter? Even the deserts have not escaped suspicion. In the Sahara lies the Eye of the Sahara, or the Rick-Hat structure, a vast, circular formation visible from space, eerily resembling Plato's description of Atlantis' capital. Rings of land and sea. Was this once a thriving hub, now eroded and scorched by time? But not all searches are academic. In the 20th century, the Nazis under Heinrich Himmler launched expeditions across the globe, convinced that Atlantis was the origin of the Aryan race. Their quest yielded no continent, but it left behind chilling traces of ideology built upon myth. And still, the searches continue. Sonar surveys, satellite images, divers scouring the ocean floor, each year new claims arise. Some are hoaxes, others remain unexplained. But the dream never dies. For if Atlantis is found, it would not just be the discovery of a lost city. It would be proof that human history is incomplete, that civilizations have risen and fallen before, leaving only fragments for us to rediscover. And yet, every discovery brings new skeptics. Mainstream science pushes back, demanding evidence, dismissing speculation, urging caution. But could modern science, in its quest for rationality, actually be standing in the way of uncovering the greatest secret of all? For every explorer who dreams of Atlantis rising from the sea, there is a scientist with folded arms, demanding evidence. And evidence, they argue, is thin. Mainstream archaeology views Atlantis not as history, but as myth. A story crafted by Plato to serve his philosophy, nothing more. They point to the lack of physical proof, no ruins, no inscriptions, no artifacts that bear the name of Atlantis. Extraordinary claims, they say, require extraordinary evidence. And until that evidence surfaces, Atlantis remains a legend. Geologists add their voice to the skepticism. They argue that no lost continent could simply vanish in the last 12,000 years. Continental plates don't sink beneath the waves overnight. Yes, sea levels rose dramatically at the end of the Ice Age, swallowing coastal settlements. But entire empires? An island larger than Libya and Asia combined? To science, the scale of Plato's description borders on impossible. And yet, cracks in the certainty remain. Take the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. For decades, geologists denied that a sudden cataclysm around 11,600 years ago could have reshaped the planet. But recent discoveries of nanodiamonds, melted glass, and unusual sediment layers suggest a massive cosmic impact may indeed have struck Earth at that time. Could such an event have triggered global floods, the very floods remembered in Plato's timeline? Then there is the Eye of the Sahara, the Rick-Hat structure. Geologists explain it as a natural formation, a product of erosion and uplift. Yet its massive concentric rings, its central island, and its alignment with Plato's dimensions make some researchers pause. Could this be coincidence, or has science overlooked something extraordinary hiding in plain sight? And what of the Piri Reis map drawn in 1513? Mainstream historians insist it merely combined coastlines known at the time with imagined extensions. But if Charles Hapgood's theory is correct, that the map is based on ancient source charts showing an ice-free Antarctica, then someone mapped the world thousands of years before known civilization. Someone who could have been Atlantean. Even Antarctica itself fuels speculation. Beneath miles of ice, radar imaging has revealed entire buried landscapes. Valleys, rivers, and plateaus untouched for 14 million years. Fossilized forests and pollen show it was once green. Could an ancient civilization have thrived there, erased when the poles shifted? Mainstream science scoffs, yet the evidence of a radically different Antarctica is undeniable. And so the debate rages. Scientists dismiss the legend, yet their own findings often brush against its edges. Every fossil forest beneath the ice, every sunken ruin offshore, every unexplained map seems to whisper, history is older than we think. Perhaps the greatest resistance is not geological but psychological. To admit Atlantis was real would mean admitting that history is not linear, that we are not the first advanced civilization to walk this planet, that knowledge has risen and fallen before. For some, this is unthinkable. And yet, the more we look, the more the line between myth and memory blurs, which raises a question science cannot fully answer. If Atlantis never existed, why does its story refuse to die? Why does it echo in myths across cultures? Why does it resurface in maps, ruins, and whispered conspiracies? Perhaps the answer lies not in science, but in culture itself, for Atlantis is not just a lost city. It has become a symbol, shaping books, films, and entire movements. But how has this ancient tale haunted our imagination for so long? And what does our obsession with it reveal about us? Atlantis may have sunk beneath the waves, but in our imagination, it never drowned. From the Renaissance to today, the lost continent has risen again and again, reborn not in stone but in story. Writers of the Enlightenment saw Atlantis as a model of the perfect society. Francis Bacon's New Atlantis imagined a land where science and faith coexisted, where human reason perfected life itself. To him, Atlantis was not a ruin of the past, but a blueprint for the future. By the 19th century, the story shifted into new territory. Ignatius Donnelly's Atlantis. The antediluvian world sparked a wave of fascination, convincing millions that every great culture, from Egypt to the Maya, was but a shadow of Atlantis. His book laid the groundwork for the idea of a single mother civilization, a source of all human wisdom. The seed of countless conspiracy theories was planted. In the 20th century, Atlantis became a tool for darker visions. The Nazis, obsessed with racial mythology, hunted for Atlantis as the supposed cradle of the Aryan race. Expeditions scoured Tibet, the Arctic, and the Andes, searching for traces of their imagined forebears. Though they found nothing, the link between Atlantis and secret societies, occult groups like the Theosophists and mystics like Edgar Cayce, only deepened. Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, made Atlantis a cornerstone of his psychic readings. He claimed its people possessed flying machines, crystals of power, and technologies that could destroy the Earth itself. According to him, fragments of Atlantis still lay buried beneath the sands of Egypt, the waters of the Caribbean, and even Antarctica. He warned that these secrets would resurface in our age, whether to save us or doom us. Atlantis soon leapt from prophecy to popular culture. Jules Verne hinted at it in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Disney imagined it as a kingdom of glowing crystals and lost machines. Films, television shows, and video games have reinvented it endlessly. Sometimes as a utopia, sometimes as a dystopia, always as a mystery. But beyond fiction, the legend persists in whispers. Some conspiracy theorists claim modern governments already know the truth, that satellites and deep-sea scans have revealed structures on the ocean floor, but the data is classified. They speak of forbidden zones in the Atlantic, where ships vanish and instruments fail, as if the ruins of Atlantis still pulse with hidden energy. Others connect it to UFO sightings, arguing that remnants of Atlantean technology are being reverse-engineered in secret laboratories. Atlantis is no longer just a lost city. It has become a stage for our hopes and fears, a place onto which we project our longing for a golden age, our suspicion of hidden powers, and our dread of repeating ancient mistakes. And yet, behind the films and fantasies, the story retains its edge. Because whether myth, metaphor, or memory, Atlantis forces us to ask, what if we are not the first? What if civilization has risen before, higher than we imagine, only to fall into silence? And what if, buried beneath ice or ocean, Atlantis waits, not as a ruin, but as a warning? Which brings us to the final question. Could Atlantis really have existed? And if so, what does its silence mean for us today? Atlantis, a name that has echoed for more than 2,000 years. Was it a shining empire of crystal towers and golden temples? A parable woven by a philosopher to warn against pride? Or a memory of something far older, something humanity cannot bear to admit? We have followed its trail across time, From Plato's dialogues, to myths of floods and drowned cities, to ruins beneath the sea and maps that should not exist. We have heard theories of cataclysm, volcanoes, tsunamis, even comet impacts. We have wandered through the shadows of conspiracies, where alien visitors and forbidden technologies linger like ghosts. We have watched explorers and dreamers search across the globe, Spain, the Caribbean, Antarctica, the Sahara, each certain they stand at the gates of the lost world. And we have seen how Atlantis refuses to die, reborn in culture, in prophecy, in every generation's imagination. But still, no definitive proof. No stone inscriptions bearing its name. No temple rising from the abyss. Atlantis remains a paradox. A place so vivid it feels real, yet so elusive it cannot be pinned down. Perhaps that is its power. Perhaps Atlantis was never meant to be found, only remembered. A story etched into humanity's collective memory, a warning disguised as wonder. Or perhaps it is still there, beneath the oceans, beneath the ice, waiting, silent but not gone. And one day, when the world is ready, or when we once again overstep the limits of our arrogance, it may rise, or it may reveal itself not as myth but as truth. And if that day comes, what will we discover? Will we find ruins and relics of a civilization that perished long ago? Or will we uncover something stranger? Machines still humming, crystals still glowing, knowledge still alive, waiting to be reclaimed? The lost continent of Atlantis may never be proven, but it remains not just in ancient texts, but in us, in our longing for a golden past, in our fear of a sudden end, in our suspicion that history is deeper, older, and more mysterious than we are told. Perhaps the real question is not whether Atlantis existed. Perhaps the real question is whether we are Atlantis, living now in our own golden age with power we barely understand, teetering on the edge of hubris. And if history does repeat itself, will our world, too, vanish in a single day and night of misfortune?